Ronnie Wood's I've Got My Own Album to Do turned 50 in 2024. While I was revisiting this album, it got me thinking, is this the best Stones solo album? Well, technically, Ronnie wasn't yet a Stone when he released I've Got My Own Album to Do, but nevertheless, things were already blurring between he and the Stones around this time. In many ways, this album could be seen as a sister album to the Stones' It's Only Rock and Roll, but more on that later. But first, a quick history on how we got here. Ronnie Wood's journey started in 1964 with The Byrds, an early mod group formed in London, best known for the tune Leaving Here, among many others. After The Byrds disbanded in 1967, Ronnie joined the Jeff Beck Group primarily as a bassist, touring and recording 2 albums with the group, Truth and Beck Ola, with Rod Stewart on lead vocals. Many believe that the Jeff Beck Group's groundbreaking sound helped lay the foundation for the style that their friends in Led Zeppelin would go on to perfect.
You've said that your band with Jeff Beck, that Zeppelin really got most of their ideas from that band, right?
Yeah, and Woody and Jeff would say the same thing, because when we were formed and playing gigs, and one time Jimmy Page came and saw us with Plant, and then John Bonham and Jimmy Page and Plant, and then Percy, Robert Plant, they all came to see us, and then they did a couple of songs that we did.
Do you get like, hey, wait a second, they're kind of taking our sound and they're taking the songs that we do, and
it was our style. Yeah.
It was your style. Do you get upset in a way when they start to have success? You don't get competitive?
Life's too short, Howard.
Anyway, back to Ronnie. By 1969, Ronnie was back on guitar, and along with Rod Stewart, joined the Small Faces, which later turned into the Faces, where Ronnie would go on to co-write hits like Stay With Me and Ooh La La. It was around this time that Rod Stewart began his own solo career, and Ronnie helped his friend there out too by playing on his albums and also co-writing the tunes Gasoline Alley and Every Picture Tells a Story. During this period, Ronnie's friendship with Keith Richards began to take shape. Wood idolized the Stones as a young teen. Ronnie once said, "I was going to be in that band one way or another, and I would broadcast the fact. I thought it looked like a good job, and it turns out that it is. It goes to show you can set your sights on something and get it if you think big and put in the work." With Rod Stewart putting more and more time into his solo career and less on the Faces, Ronnie began work on his first solo album, and thus I've Got My Own Album to Do was born. The album was released on September 13th, 1974. And the lineup on the album is absolutely insane. I mean, check this out. You've got Ronnie Wood, Keith Richards, Mick Taylor, George Harrison, the great Willie Weeks on bass, Andy Newmark from Sly and the Family Stones Band, and the great Ian McLagan on keys, who also played in the Faces with Ronnie. And that's just the band. On vocals, Ronnie invited his pals Mick Jagger, David Bowie on some background vocals, and also Rod Stewart coming along for the ride as well. The band was put together just for this album, but it sounds like they've been playing forever, which is what makes the music on this album so special, the chemistry. As I said before, Ronnie's album could be seen as a sister album to the Stones' It's Only Rock and Roll, which was released the same year. And the song that bridges the two albums together is the one that kicks off Ronnie's album, I Can Feel the Fire. You see, Ronnie had a hand in helping Mick finish the song, It's Only Rock and Roll. The story of that can be found on my It's Only Rock and Roll video. But in return for the favor, Mick helped Ronnie out on a song he was working on, I Can Feel the Fire.
I was writing a song called I Can Feel the Fire, and I was saying, Mick, can you help me? I've got the verses and blah, blah, blah. And he was helping me with the delivery, and he said, well, I've got this song called It's Only Rock and Roll, can you help me with this? And I'm going, yeah. So we already had the track down to I Can Feel the Fire, and he said, can we put the track down to It's Only Rock and Roll?
As for working out writing credits, Mick and Ronnie agreed on an arrangement where Mick would keep the credits for It's Only Rock and Roll, and Ronnie would keep his credits for I Can Feel the Fire, despite the others' contributions to each of those songs. So it was kind of like a trade, but Ronnie does officially get a inspiration by credit on It's Only Rock and Roll. And that leads us to the opening track on Ronnie's I've Got My Own Album to Do, I Can Feel the Fire, which is a damn great track to open the album on. It really is quite the punch from the get-go, because you've got a powerhouse roster here of people on the track. It's sort of like a duet, really, between Ronnie Wood and Mick Jagger on vocals, because Mick is very prominent in the song, and it's just a great way to enter the album. The vocals are so intertwined between the two, it really kind of is confusing to hear who's who. This song is just guitars everywhere. It's a super song to put on with headphones and listen carefully, because you can get lost in this galaxy of guitars and instruments. And by the time the song ends, it's this wall of sound and just a lot to take in. Super fun track. The song sort of acts like an introduction to the band, because everyone has a shining moment, especially Ian McClag, and one of many shining moments for him starts off this album. The album has quite a two-punch start with Mick Jagger on the first track and another huge name on track 2 with George Harrison coming in playing some beautiful slide guitar on the song Far East Man that he co-wrote with Ronnie. We're already on track 2 and Ronnie has already put in a ballad so early on in the album. Obviously, when you've written a song with a Beatle, you want to show that off and put that up as early as possible.
Far East Man was it was the brainchild of George Harrison, because with his Hare Krishna and his Om sign, and he was very much into Indian culture. And me being with my sense of humour, at the time people were saying Far Out Man, and I said, well, why don't we just call it Far East Man? And it also had a spiritual message because of George from the heart, you know, gotta do what I can, you know, that kind of, it was quite heart-wrenching, helping this lost soul out.
But it should be noted that this album has really as many ballads as there are rockers. It's about 50-50 almost. If you actually take a look at the whole picture, Ronnie comes off as a little bit of a balladeer in a way. He has an ear for ballads, and in this album he really shows off that side of himself. The album continues to open up with another ballad, with Mystifies Me, which is, I would say, is in Ronnie's wheelhouse. This is, to me, what he does best, this kind of 70s R&B soul, harkening back to like a Motown vibe kind of song. Fun stuff with Take a Look at the Guy, track 4. Very special song because you get to hear Keith Richards, Ronnie Wood, and Mick Taylor all together in one spot. I mean, once you hear that intro and you hear that slide work, there's only one person you could tell who that belongs to. The next song, Act Together, is very special because it's credited as a Jagger Richards composition. So Keith must have brought the song in while working on other songs with Ronnie, perhaps a leftover song from a previous session or writing session that the Stones or Keith may have had. Keith Richards plays both the acoustic and electric piano on the track, which implies that this is really his song. It's got a very swooping and emotional melody, which is definitely in Keith's wheelhouse. And in case the Stones' vibe wasn't strong enough, they decided to add some background vocals to this song, which then gives it a very, very obvious wink to an Exile on Main Street kind of vibe. The song Am I Grooving You marks the first cover on the album, which is a cover of Freddie Scott's R&B soul song from a few years earlier. Ronnie's take is a little bit tougher and more guitar-oriented compared to Freddie Scott's more vocals and big horns kind of arrangement. A very cool groove accentuated by the ARP keyboard synth that they're using, which really provided some very kind of deep low notes on the bottom of the song. And Ronnie also playing some great harmonica on this track. And just like the opening track, this one is a little bit like a duet between Ronnie and Keith, who both share lead vocal roles on this track. Side B on the album gets a little lumpy for me, but not without some highlights. Shirley is a great band moment, but I think for me a little bit on the weak side. It sounds like a jam that they tried to get a song out of. But there are some highlights with Willie Weeks playing some mighty nice stuff here, and also a very nice electric keyboard performance played by Mick Taylor, who also plays bass on the track. Sure, The One You Need is another cool song that is technically a Jagger Richards composition. Who knows, again, where this song came from, perhaps another previous writing session. This feels like a long-lost Chuck Berry song. And I think I read that the band themselves thought it was a Chuck Berry song when Keith was showing them the song during the sessions. It's songs like this that gives you a glimpse into what would come later with Keith and Ronnie's spin-off band, the New Barbarians. Ian McLagan shows off some mighty great boogie-woogie stuff on Sure the One You Need. Again, he is, I think, the unsung hero in this album. He has many great moments, and he was just such a talented musician that it was a joy to listen to him, and he's all over this album. If You Gotta Make a Fool Out of Somebody features Ronnie's good friend Rod Stewart coming in to help with the lead vocals. This is a very rough recording for my ears, at least. It sounds like a one-take situation with the band, because the vocals, I would bet, were probably one mic, Ronnie and Rod together, and it has that raucous kind of on-the-fly energy, which has its charm, but I don't think the album would have lost much if they had left this one off. But the album ends with a high note with Crotch Music, a song credited to bassist Willie Weeks. I love this track, and that opening bass intro is just fucking great.
Crotch Music, Willie Weeks' finger exercise on the bass. And I said, that's not a finger exercise, Willie. It's a song. And so I got him his first publishing deal as a songwriter on that one. I was very proud of that.
It's kind of surprising that the band didn't have more of these kind of instrumental jams on the album, but it just ends the album in a right way. So, is this album the best Stones solo album? I mean, we do have Keith's first album, Talk Is Cheap, right up there. You have Mick Jagger's Wandering Spirit, which is a damn good album. But there is something very light and breezy and fun about I've Got My Own Album to Do. It has this extra spark and vibrancy in it that, I'm sorry to say, I wish an album like It's Only Rock and Roll, the Stones album from that year, would have had a little bit of. And that's an album that I really, really like. It's that extra spark in this album that reminds you of the spontaneity and the fun that was in all the Stones' best albums. Spiritually speaking, this album is a Stones album at its core. The sound on this album has always been quintessentially 70s to me. It's kind of on the muddy side, a little bit dark. And surprisingly, the remaster that came out in 2017 by Friday Music really was an improvement in sound. A lot of punch, great clarity. It just felt like you had, all these layers come off it. That's a great remaster. It almost sounded like a remix to me because it was sounding so fresh. Ronnie Wood's I've Got My Own Album at 50 years old, absolutely deserving of a listen, especially if you've never heard this one before. So what do you think? Can this album be seen as the best solo Stones album? Or is there another one you have in mind? Put it in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Hangfire.